Madden, and I wrote the book, Parker's Path. Today, I'm going to be reading it for you. Parker McDare was hardly aware until he cleared his path. It all began earlier that day when Brooke Belda came to school feeling very sad. Brooke lived near Parker's house, just on the other side of Walnut Woods. Brooke's dog, Rocky, had died the day before. When Parker saw Brooke still crying at lunch, he yelled, "Brooke is a crybaby, still crying over a silly dog." Their teacher, Miss Clover, did not like Parker's words. "Parker, that was not nice. Now, say you are sorry to Brooke. You need to find some empathy, young man." Looking down at Brooke's pink and purple shoes, Parker quickly said he was sorry and hoped Miss Clover would forget about it. She did not. Parker was sent home with a big white envelope for his mom. As he climbed on the school bus, Parker sat next to his older brother, Oliver. "Oliver, I'm in trouble. Miss Clover said I need to get some empathy. Can you help me find some before we go home?" As the older brother, Oliver will surely know where Parker can get some empathy. Oliver laughed. Empathy is not something you get. It is something you feel. Empathy is when you see people going through something hard, and you can feel what they are feeling. Parker was puzzled. He knew he had feelings. He could feel happy. He could feel sad. Sometimes he even felt mad. But how could he see and then feel other people's feelings too? Oliver saw that his little brother was still stumped. They climbed off the school bus near their home. Oliver waved for Parker to follow him as Oliver headed towards Walnut Woods. "Oliver, where are you going?" yelled Parker, chasing behind his big brother. Oliver ran into the green brush. Oliver hopped over and climbed under the fallen tree branches on their trail. Parker followed. "Parker, today I am going to help you clear your path. Inside everyone, there is an empathy path. What you see with your eyes needs to flow like a river into your heart. Sometimes there is not a clear path from what we see to what we feel, especially when we are trying to understand what someone else is feeling." The brothers continued with their hike. Soon they came across a small clearing in the woods and stood on the edge of Critter's Creek. Its narrow waters flow for miles, but today the waters were pooling up on the left. Looking to the right, Parker could see downstream. Critter's Creek was now a puddly, muddly mess. Oliver knew what was wrong. Beavers built a huge dam that was stretching across the creek and now holding back the water. The water was starting to flow over the upper banks, but downstream was just a brown, soupy puddle. "Look, Parker, that beaver dam is like what blocks your empathy from flowing between your eyes to your heart. Just like this beaver dam is not good for the critters and plants downstream, if you cannot let what you see with your eyes flow into your heart, you cannot be kind, acceptful, helpful, or even brave." Parker did not agree with Oliver or Miss Clover. He was Very brave. If that took empathy, he must have plenty of it already. Oliver looked at the beaver dam. Then he looked at the muddy creek bed below. We must get this water moving, or it will overflow and flood the plants in the woods. The animals and plants downstream also need water. Oliver grabbed a stick and quickly started to dig a route next to the dam to allow the water to pass by. So, tell me what happened at school today that made Miss Clover tell you you need to find some empathy, asked Oliver. Parker told Oliver the story about Brooke Belda and her silly dog. Oliver listened and then shook his head. Now, Parker, didn't you find your pet toad Cliff in this very creek last year? The one you keep in an aquarium in our bedroom? Is Cliff just a silly pet? My toad Cliff is awesome. He is not silly, replied Parker. Oliver smiled. So if Cliff died, you'd feel bad? Maybe even sad? Well, that is how Brooke Belda feels about losing her dog. When you have empathy, you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. Parker thought for a moment. He certainly did not want to wear Brooke Belda's pink and purple shoes. Parker snapped back. I said I was sorry to Brooke. Isn't that enough? Oliver groaned. Little brother, saying you are sorry is just sympathy, and you only did it because Miss Clover asked you to. There is a big difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is feeling what someone else is feeling, actually trying to imagine you are feeling it too. You still have a lot to learn. With those words, Oliver turned into the trees and headed towards their home. Parker felt very small and alone. He did not know if he should run after his brother or stay. Parker picked up a stick and started digging at the route Oliver had started. Then Parker heard a whimper. He looked around. He thought he would see a baby animal. But as his eyes looked over to the shoreline, he saw a pink and purple shoe. And then he looked up, suddenly finding himself looking straight into the eyes of Brooke Belda. Brooke had one pink and purple shoe on the shore, and her other leg was stuck deep into the creek's mud, up to her knee. The look of fear on Brooke Belda's face reminded Parker of the time he had slipped into Critter's Creek. Brooke started to cry and said, Parker McDare, I guess you want to go tell everyone I'm a crybaby again. But Parker didn't even hear her because he knew he needed to help. He could not get to Brooke because there was deep water above the dam and he would get stuck in the same mud below the dam. Parker had to think quickly. If only the mud was not so thick, Brooke could pull her leg out. He suddenly had an idea for making the mud less thick. He grabbed his stick and quickly started digging out the route for the water, digging as fast as he could. And all of a sudden, the water broke free and it started to flow down to Brooke. Then Parker had another idea. He could cross the creek using the beaver dam as a bridge. He ran to Brooke and reached his hand out to hers. On the count of 3, try to stand up on your free leg. 1, 2, 3. Parker pulled with all of his might, and suddenly, up came Brooke. They both fell to the ground, safe from the mud and safe from Critters Creek. Brooke looked down and saw her leg covered in mud. And when she realized her pink and purple shoe was missing, she looked a little sad. "That was so scary. Will you be in trouble for losing your shoe?" asked Parker. Brooke smiled. She thought her parents would be happy she was safe. Parker agreed and waved goodbye as he watched Brooke walk home on just one pink and purple shoe. "See you tomorrow," he called after her. Parker hopped back across the beaver dam one last time. He thought about Rocky, the dog, Miss Clover, the big white envelope, Oliver's talk, and the look in Brooke Belda's eyes as she pulled her muddy leg from Critters Creek. As Parker headed towards home, the block in the path between Parker's eyes to his heart broke free, and more empathy flowed like a river into his heart than ever before. Parker hoped Oliver might come back to Critters Creek with him after dinner to dig for Brooke's pink and purple shoe. Parker's empathy would only grow after that day. Each time he looked into someone's eyes and understood what they were feeling, more empathy flowed into his heart and kindness bloomed. Parker McDare was fully aware today was the day that he cleared his path, his empathy path. Thank you all so much for joining me for reading Parker's Path. I hope you enjoyed.